Hello, BookTube. Well, it's a bleak and barren Sunday here at Hyde Cottage. It's a beautiful day, but there's no mail. None whatsoever. I keep periodically going out onto the porch just in case I've got the day wrong, just in case somebody decides to deliver mail on Sunday anyway, but it hasn't happened and it's not going to happen. And that's extra stingy this particular Sunday, since this week also had another mail-free day. But that's all right. I'll survive. But as usual, to console myself, I thought I would do a tag. And this particular tag is aimed squarely at a part of BookTube that I pay too little attention to, and that is AuthorTube, the splinter side of BookTube about writing. I do a lot of writing, and it's not just for work. I do a lot of what we might call creative writing. We'd especially call that if I had any talent. I do love crafting narratives, fiction or nonfiction, apart from work, extended narratives. And I found a tag here on the trusty iPad that's squarely about that. It's the Story Idea Writing tag. It was created by BytheBrooke, who I had never heard of before. I love her channel. And I saw it on Foxclouds. And it's a bunch of questions about your current WIP, your current work in progress. So I thought we'd get right to it and see if it cheers me up a bit. Question number one is current story. What is the story you're currently writing? And I am currently writing a fiction story for the Hot and Sticky Summer Novel Writing Challenge over at Strip Cover Lit, where you do a few dozen words every day, all the way to September, to build a basic manuscript of 50,000 words. Not a bad idea. It's sort of like a stretched out version of NaNoWriMo. And the work that I'm doing now is a contemporary romance. It is, in fact, gay fiction. The very first gay fiction I've ever written. I've written fiction in the past, historical fiction, mythological fiction, in which some of the characters had homosexual or lesbian relationships, but I've never written a novel that was about that. And this one is. It's called Giancarlo in Love and Lust. And it's about a teenager who's working at the counter at his father's shop in Venice in 2018. When he meets one of the patrons to the shop one day is a member of a tourist group, and sparks fly. First, just for lust, and then something else, maybe. And Giancarlo is very cynical about it, and the young man that it happens to is also he's not cynical, but he's very doubtful about it, especially since it turns out that he's not just a tourist from another world in just the simple way that all tourists are from another world. He's also from a very different world. He's from the extreme English aristocracy, a world that someone like Giancarlo could maybe enter as a kitchen worker, but never as anything else. At least so he thinks. And the story is their relationship. It's the development of their relationship. It's a very slow, very low-key story. There is a big dramatic moment at the midway point, and then there's another big dramatic moment at the end. But for the most part, I'm describing two people learning to know each other, one way and another, and it's a fascinating experience. I'm not 100% sure that I'm doing gay fiction correctly, because I maintain I'm not 100% sure that gay fiction in 2018 even knows what it is. Once upon a time, the heyday, the pinnacle, in my opinion, of what we traditionally consider to be gay fiction, was written as a howl of protest against the dark. It was written by a small sliver of society that thought that it was going out of existence. That this new and weird plague targeting only itself would wipe it out. Or at least put the whole community under extreme pressure. Pressure that had only barely begun to alleviate for social reasons. So gay fiction, as I typically understood it, has been social fiction. This is a downtrodden, disenfranchised, despised minority that now is the victim of a plague that seems tailor-made just to decimate its own ranks. The fiction coming out of those two forces, I understood completely. I knew what it meant, and it led to some beautiful, beautiful writing. But gay fiction in 2018, especially Western gay fiction in 2018, where gay people march by the tens of thousands in the streets. They aren't all arrested. Gay people marry, and have the legal ability to marry, and it isn't a civil war. It isn't a massive issue. Some young people are put out of their homes, and that's a tragedy. But there are support groups for them that didn't exist before. And also the plague itself has been tamed. A diagnosis of AIDS in America is no longer a death sentence. Under those changed conditions, I'm not sure that gay fiction knows what it is. I'm not sure, in fact, that it exists at all. I mean, if you don't have massive social pressures like that, and you just write a story about two young men falling in love, as I am doing, then how is it that you're writing anything other than simply a love story? What difference does it make anymore if it doesn't make a difference anymore? I don't know. Those are some of the things that I'm thinking about while I write this thing. Also, I mean, there's the human element and also the meta element. I'm wondering about it. But prompt number 2 is spark of inspiration. Does your idea begin with characters, plot, world building, or something else? And it's a little alarming that of the choices given here, outline is not one of them. But in answer to the spirit of the question, my fictional stories especially, tend to begin with an opening scene or moment. If I don't have that, I really can't go forward. So something like that, even if I don't end up using it in quite like its form, or even if it doesn't end up being the opening of the story, there's always that. There's some moment, some opening scene that's designed to describe, to evoke, to hook. That tends to be where my stories start. Prompt number 3 is brainstorm. How do you puzzle piece your story elements together? Do you start with the ending and make your way to the beginning, or vice versa? Again, the question seems to imply a whole generation of young writers who don't know what an outline is. So no matter what you do with the puzzle pieces of your story, you're not going to fit them together in the outline. You're going to fit them together in the actual foundry floor. And I don't write like that. So I have elements in place. For Jean Carlo in Love and Lust, I know what I want to happen. I know some of the things that I want to happen. I might move some of those around, but never on the page, never while I'm writing. It would be an outline that I would do that. I would work out when and where I want those things to happen and how, and go from there. I don't know if that helps any. Maybe I'm not in the spirit of these questions. Prompt number 4 is keep or toss. How do you know when you want to keep or dump a story? If we're talking about the whole story, the whole thing, not just parts of it, the way I know is whether or not I enjoy reading it. Not when it's finished, just segment by segment. So if I write 30 pages of something, and then I set it aside for a day, and I do work, or I do other stuff, and then I come back and I read it and I don't enjoy reading it, then either it needs to radically change or I need to dump it. Not so much the function of whether or not I enjoy writing it. I really enjoy writing fiction, no matter what, even if it's a dud. Even if it ends up being something I don't use, I still enjoy the process so much that that's not a good barometer. I usually wait. If I don't enjoy reading what I've written, then that's usually a sign that it's not going to go anywhere. Prompt number 5 is original idea. How much of your original story actually ends up being used? I use almost everything that I write, but again, I think it out ahead of time exhaustively. I outline it, But even having said that, there's always one scene that I just love that never makes it in. No version of it that is just completely missing. There's always one piece of disjecta membra. There's always one rejected scene. I don't know why that is. My instincts for what will work dramatically and what won't are pretty good. I've written a lot of fiction. But even so, it never fails. In a longer work, there's always one scene that simply doesn't work at all. I might love it, but I can't use it. I don't know why that is. And it's odd that I can never tell what that scene will be until the whole thing is done. And I'm looking at it and something feels like a rock under the mattress, and then I realize, oh, it's that scene. That won't work. It has to go. I can't repurpose it. I can't use it somewhere else. It just has to be cut completely. maybe the writers out there are familiar with that process, but it's unusual for me. Then prompt number 6 is hide or share. Do you share your book ideas with friends or keep them secret? And I don't actually hide my fiction writing especially, I don't actually hide it, but I am sometimes so caught up in doing it, or I'll do it as a sweetmeat at the end of the night, so I'm writing it late at night and then the day takes off the next morning, that I sometimes don't mention it. It's often been pointed out to me, even by my closest friends, that sometimes they don't know. They have an idea in the back of their heads that I'm always working on some longer fictional work, but there are times, long times, when they don't know what it is, when they haven't heard me talk about it. And some of them will ask, and then they'll get a ton of tedium right up their nose. Prompt number 7 is dream. How many books of yours have originated in dreams? My dreams are not very interesting. You wouldn't want to read a book or a story that originated in one of my dreams. They mostly are dreams about running over grass and then occasionally stopping to smell someone's poop. And outside Dennis Cooper, there really isn't much in the way of fiction that you could write on such subjects. So, no, it's mostly actual thought, not dreams or nightmares. Prompt number 8 is Doppelganger. Have you ever had an idea for a story and then saw it in a movie or a TV show or something like that? And that constantly happens. It's like... who was it? Foxclouds. It's like she said, there's nothing really new under the sun. There are no actual news stories. So, at least in broad outline, but sometimes in a fair degree of specifics, you'll think up a story and then you'll watch something at random on Netflix and you'll see it right there, or some close variation of it, something so close that you no longer feel completely comfortable or happy with your original idea because it's too close. It's nobody's fault. You didn't know about the thing ahead of time. The producers of the thing certainly didn't know about your work ahead of time. And yet, something has to be done, and since they were there first, you're the one who's got to shift a little. But echoes like that happen to me all the time. I would imagine there's no writer out there that hasn't had that happen. Prompt number 9 is big screen inspiration. Have any of your favorite movies or TV shows sparked ideas or scenes in your book? And no, in the strictest sense of the question, no. The ideas and scenes have not sparked anything. However, I steal liberally. If I see a great transitional device, for instance, from one scene to another, something that I've never tried before, and it looks like it would work on the printed page, then I'll steal it. If I see a neat twist on a character or a neat bit of the narrative handling landscape or something like that, then I'll steal. And also, by the same question, I will also donate. if we use the stealing metaphor on the other end, sometimes I will have written something that will contain a device or a gesture or something like that, and I will see it in a movie or a TV show, and that will suddenly wake me up, and I'll think, oh, okay, that is a little trite. If it looks bad on the screen, it's going to look bad on the page as well, and I'll just remove it. So it's a dialogue between the two things, definitely, but not so much inspiration. I mostly just swipe. And also, real life, absolutely. Oh my God. I don't know how to build a character without working in generous parts of people that I know. I mix them up. As one great author said, I use all of my acquaintances in my characters, but I make sure to pulp them first. She pointed out you would never recognize a pig in a sausage. And I agree with that completely. I do the same thing. And then the last prompt number 10 is nostalgia. What's the oldest story that you remember coming up with? It was fairly recent. I came to literacy fairly late. But the first story that I remember doing was called The World in Ice. And it was about a man who goes to a psychiatrist's office. He's been referred there by his friends and family because he's just lost his wife. He's young. His wife was young. It wasn't planned. It was an accident. It caught him totally by surprise. And his friends and family think that he's having an inordinate time grieving, that his grief seems to be taking over for him. And they strongly recommend, almost an intercession, they recommend that he go to a psychiatrist. And while he is making his initial visits to the psychiatrist, there is news. The story cuts away to world news. First national news, and then world news, about record-breaking cold temperatures. First in America, and then starting to report in wider and wider outlets all around the world. And it's getting worse and worse. Serious, serious cold weather. And as the story progresses, the cold starts to become not just newsworthy, but a matter of emergency. deeply, deeply below freezing, dangerous, people dying, machinery not working, food dying, further and further south even, so that produce starts to die. As these sessions progress, as this man makes his way through the cold to his psychiatrist's office, for sessions that don't seem to be getting anywhere, and gradually the psychiatrist realizes that her patient is causing that cold, that his grief is so all-consuming that it is actually freezing the entire world. So her desire to heal him takes on a new urgency, but the realization of what's going on also helps her with breakthroughs on how to heal him. And it's just 40 pages long. I remember vividly the first feeling of writing it. I remember vividly that was the first time that I felt the incredible high of writing fiction, of being there in the God seat, just able to make things happen and not happen, with first and foremost your own self as judge about whether or not it's convincing, whether or not it makes sense. That feeling, the first touch of that feeling was amazing. Knowing that I could simply pull out a piece of paper or a word processor or a computer and make that happen. that was all it took. That hooked me. And that's it. That is the what was this called again? The story idea writing tag to liven up my bleak and barren Sunday, and it did. It's got me thinking about writing. I've got a whole bunch of writing projects on the plates, and I'm happy to have them all. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now. This is an old tag, I think, so I have no idea which of you might have done it. Of course, if it matters, I tag all of AuthorTube, all the writers out there, because these are some good prompts. But in the meantime, I feel a little better, so I'm going to make a point not to go out on the porch and check for mail. That will only make things worse. I will just resign myself to the fact that mail won't come until tomorrow. I have plenty of other things to do, and 1 or 2 books already here at Hyde Cottage. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.